will call the work session to order, and I will turn it over to the city manager.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Hope everybody had a great MLK Day of Service yesterday, participating in events all throughout the city and the county over the weekend. And so today, we're happy to be back in front of you with the 11:30 work session, and the topic is emergency public information and crisis communication. The item is going to be presented by Rand Northam from the Communications Department, but Robin Deacle is going to tee it up.
Thank you, Manager. Good morning, Mayor and Council members. I'm Robin Deacle, the Communications Director. When I started interviewing about 2 years ago with the city, I had all these questions about crisis communications. What do you know about communicating in crisis? How can you help us do it better? Well, when I came on board, one of the first things I did was meet with our Emergency Management Director, Chief Griffin, and we got to work. And the city follows operationally to respond to crisis the National Incident Management System, which is a nice big name, for just a scalable system you can use to respond in crises, whether that is the event that happened at North Hills on Friday or the hurricane in the western part of the state, Helene, and all of the response that happened as a result of that. The most important thing you can do in those emergency situations is have a single point of contact, which is what the Communications Department is charged with covering. And I was very fortunate about a year ago to bring on board Rand Northam, who has overseen creating a lot of policies and procedures and practice to help us do that well. And I'm going to turn it over to him now. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And good morning, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Madam Manager, Madam Attorney. I'm Rand Northam, Communications Department Assistant Director for Public Affairs. And today I'm going to briefly set the scene about crises and emergencies and how we communicate about them. We'll look at some of the progress we've made in just 11 months. We have been working hard to set us up better, including getting communications staff involved earlier in the process for large-scale events. A lot of that progress is thanks to strong focus on training, and we'll look ahead to what you can expect next. Instead of going bullet by bullet with this agenda, I'm going to weave these items for you into a quote that is used many times during public information officer training. Get the right message to the right people at the right time so they can make the right decisions to save lives. First, let's define a few things. I mentioned public information officer already. The PIO is the lead spokesperson during an incident. Depending on the size of the incident, other staff may be called to assist the PIO with very specific roles and tasks. I want to acknowledge that it can take a lot of personnel to properly message quickly and effectively, and for the sake of time and clarity today, I'm going to use the term PIO to represent all public information positions. PIOs are first responders. We are ready to respond when we are called, including nights, weekends, and holidays. There's an important distinction between emergency and crisis response. An emergency may come on quickly. It may be unexpected. It can be shorter and always requires an immediate response. It is usually when public safety is at risk due to natural causes or something started by a human being. A crisis may have longer lasting impacts, and it has major implications for the organization's reputation, especially if not addressed properly. I'm going to clear these dots real quick. So we know that Raleigh can be impacted by a laundry list of issues. And like Chief Griffin says, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It is the city's duty to our residents and community members to be the reliable source for information, especially when it comes to public safety. Since I started with the city last February, we have held 3 communication-specific trainings, in addition to other trainings and exercises hosted by emergency management and other outside agencies. We have developed templates for situations we can anticipate so that we are ready to get messaging to the community as quickly as possible. And we lead with the actions people should take to be safe. So this is a very basic example of an emergency alert message we may send. This brief version is an example of a message you might receive on your cell phone, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. We'll put similar messaging on other channels like social media and our website, where we can also give a few more details. In 2024, we signed a contract with Julie Parker Communications. JPC has been in Raleigh twice, with 2 more trainings coming up this year. These trainings are open to all city departments. We look at local and national examples of communities that have experienced emergencies and crises, and we discuss how we would respond in those situations. We cover a wide range of topics, and we make sure that there is a local focus during exercises to get as close to real-world experience as possible. And here to hear directly from JPC, here are Julie and Christopher.
We're here to help Raleigh get ready for communicating in a crisis. Cities will face a crisis. What we don't know is what exactly will that crisis be.
When the crisis happens and all eyes are on you, that is your time to shine or to sink.
Preparing for that through training is so important because it allows us to put the reps in of communicating with the public when a crisis is occurring, even though we're not sure yet what that future crisis will be. But it lets us have a plan in place and a process in place and make sure all the team members know what their role is when we're communicating with the public in a crisis.
So we love the ability to come in, to talk through best practices, to do practical exercises, have people put their heads together. Different perspectives around a table will bring all sorts of good ideas to fruition.
We don't want to wait until an actual crisis to see if our plans work, see if our operations work. So we have these tabletop scenarios, which are fictional incidents, and we put our teams through the ropes, and we try and break the process because we want those mistakes to happen. We want, if there is a broken part, to happen during a practice. And then when the real incident comes, when a real crisis is impacting our community, we're much better prepared to effectively communicate through it.
We create a safe space where it's okay for mistakes to be made, because as a group, we talk through that and we talk how that could be perceived by the public as a misstep. What our training seeks to do is make you feel confident enough to say, we had a misstep. This is what we're doing about it. We want the public to know, and this is how we're going to work to prevent this from ever happening in the future.
So you have to put in reps. It's like anything you do, it has to be muscle memory. So doing the training once is great, but team members come and go, and skills are perishable. So we want to make sure that we're always prepared. We don't know when the next crisis is going to hit. So we want to make sure that we're always ready, and that we do that by making sure we're practicing for whatever the scenario is, that we have a plan and a process in place.
You should tell the public that you do this sort of training. That instills trust. They're aware that these kinds of things can happen. They're getting ready for it. They're doing everything they can to keep us safe and informed.
So when thinking about the right people to get the message to and how to get it to them, we have to know that it's constantly changing. We have to be nimble in understanding that it can change even during the incident. The work that we are doing when there isn't an incident involves developing relationships internally and externally so that we have the connections in our community to reach as many people as we can. We are always thinking about our vulnerable populations, knowing that we may have to reach them through unique channels. And of course, we use our strong relationships with our local media outlets to help us tell the story to the masses. When emergencies strike, people may be stranded in their home or outside of their home in a strange place. They are desperate for information. So one of the tools we will use is to activate an incident call center, staffed with real people to give community members answers about how the incident is impacting city services. We will advertise the call center on all our channels, websites, social media, local media, and flyers hung on city buildings. And we will keep the line open as long as the community needs that level of support during the incident. With the work we do to develop draft and template messages and create new and develop stronger relationships with our community, the right time is as quick as possible. What we have to be careful and protective about, however, is the importance of getting factual information out. Fast is only good if it's right and fast. After initial messaging, we tell recipients when to expect the next update. Even when we don't have new information, we stay in front of the incident until we have the good fortune to share that the incident has concluded, and we will be clear about when impacted people can return to normalcy. I want to highlight one tool we have at our disposal that has been discussed here and out in the community. ReadyWake, the branded name for the software Everbridge, is a platform hosted by Wake County government, which has graciously offered us access to that platform. There are two types of messages this program can send. First, community members can subscribe to ReadyWake and receive messages throughout the county on a variety of topics. Users can select how they receive the messages, text message, phone call, email, and even set times at which the messages will not come through so they won't be disturbed. The Do Not Disturb does not affect the second category of messaging, wireless emergency alerts, which is often referred to as a WEA. A wireless emergency alert is sent to all cell phones, regardless of mobile carrier, within a defined area. Wake County Emergency Management is the only agency authorized to send messaging on that platform within the county. We have an agreement and a process that should a life-threatening alert need to be sent, City of Raleigh contacts the on-call staff at Wake County with the requested message. Within minutes, the message can go to every cell phone in the area we define on a map. We have developed a list of drafted messages that we can pull from to speed the process along even more, and this process has been used successfully for a number of incidents recently. And so I want to reiterate, ReadyWake often refers to the subscription-based messages, and wireless emergency alerts are location-based and go to all cell phones in a selected area. So I shared this post from LinkedIn in the backup materials of this presentation. Jeanette Sutton is an associate professor of emergency management and homeland security at the University of Albany. One thing she trains on is alert messaging during incidents. During Tropical Storm Debbie, the communications department worked with our stormwater division and Wake County Emergency Management to issue an alert to residents that may be impacted by flooding. It felt really good to stumble on this post on LinkedIn to see someone outside of our organization who is hyper-focused on this work found the way our message was developed to hit many of the standards that she teaches. One thing I'll add about ReadyWake and wireless emergency alerts is an example from just last week. Everyone in Wake County received an all-clear message at 11:30 p.m. after an armed and dangerous person was arrested by Wake County Sheriff after a multi-hour search. It's easy to assume that ReadyWake isn't being used frequently if you don't receive a message from inside a geofenced location. While that message went to more people than it was intended, it was a reminder that the tool is in use on a fairly regular basis. When we deliver the right message to the right people at the right time, we set the foundation on which we and our community can build or seek the shelter and resources they need to make the right decisions to save lives. It's important to note that our job is to communicate what our emergency management division and other operations partners are doing. I want to thank Assistant Director Satwana Hurdle and Chief Herbert Griffin, for being great partners in these efforts. They opened their doors and welcomed me in, as did many in the city of Raleigh, and we have made some great progress because of that. So before I wrap up, I want to share a few more examples of work that we've done to prepare. In June, we pulled together nearly 30 city staff from many departments and divisions. We worked through an example of a large tropical system that was pointing directly at Raleigh. We divided staff into their respective roles and threw real-world scenarios at them, and many reported back that it prepared them to be able to better respond should a major weather event hit our community. In addition to the many VIP trips that we saw leading up to the elections, the Emergency Operations Center and Joint Information Center activated on election night. City staff came together in person to be in a position to quickly respond if there was any unrest in our community. City staff from multiple departments got to ring in the new year together, while community members took to downtown streets. The acorn dropped and the fireworks flew successfully. We did have a severe weather system develop to our west. Thankfully, that system went north of Raleigh. However, it was good that we were all in the same room and we developed a message and had a plan for delivery at the ready to make sure our message was consistent everywhere. In closing, we rely on the National Weather Service to keep us informed about inclement weather. We will continue our training efforts this year, including 2 more from our training consultant, Julie Parker Communications, and we are working closely with the Office of Special Events for each large permitted event, including programs like Dreamville. As I mentioned earlier, emergency management and communications are working closely together to prepare for large-scale events, and using the possibility of severe weather impacting first night as an example, we can respond better when we are in the room rather than on call. I want to thank you for your time, and we are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions? Counselor Jones?
Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation. What are there a list of topics that residents can expect to receive the text from? Because in the one that you mentioned, we didn't receive a, hey, this is what we're looking for. We just received the closeout. So I know that led to some confusion of, wait, should I be concerned? I didn't know this was an issue. I'm glad it's over, but I don't know. So I get winter weather. And then is it any police activity or what kind of things should residents expect?
So specifically about the all clear message, I do want to make sure that and be clear, that was not a City of Raleigh incident, not a Raleigh police incident. That was Wake County Sheriff that put out the all clear, and Wake County government, of course, putting out the all clear because it was a wireless emergency alert. But messages, we did talk with Wake County and got some background on that. Initial messages inside a geo-fenced location were sent for folks for the search area that was taking place. So those messages initially went to people within those geo-fenced areas. It was the all clear message that went, I believe, countywide, that went to everyone. And Wake County is looking into why that message went out to everybody rather than inside those geofence locations again. So that's why I think it was a little bit alarming to folks to see the all clear but not receive the initial message. But that's the description that we got from that. And then for topics you mentioned, any wireless emergency alert is not based on a subscription that you sign up for. Wireless emergency alert is for any imminent public threat or public safety threat. So those are determined by the county. It is the ReadyWake messages that you can sign up for subscription-based topics, and you can find those at readywake.com.
Great. And then just a follow-up to that, I think because we got the county one, I know in my neighborhood there were police in my neighborhood and they were searching for someone, and so right after that I'm like, wait, was I supposed to get an alert to stay inside? I think that gave me some confusion as to what to expect from the city level, because I do understand that was a county. So do you guys send alerts if there is a person of interest being looked in a specific neighborhood or specific area? Is that what you guys do, or should we not expect that from the city?
Yes, and on multiple occasions, the Raleigh Police Department has sent those geolocated wireless emergency alerts to areas where there is a search that is active.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Counselor Silver, and then Patton.
You mentioned that residents can call into a Raleigh Incident Call Center. Is that a 311? I mean, how do people find that number?
As soon as we activate, that number is not an active number 24/7, 365. So as we are thinking about incidents, let's say weather-related incidents, we ask that question. Is this an incident that we're going to open up a call center? And if we do, we will publish that number on our website, social media, we'll send it to the local media, and we will post it on flyers in our buildings as well. So that if somebody's walking up and sees a closed door, how do I get in touch? How do I ask questions about what services are available? And we'll publish that number. But it is not staffed 24/7, and so we want to make sure that that's very clear. When it's open, we share the number. When it's not open, we're not sharing that number out.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I have 2 questions. One is just like acknowledging that climate change is upon us, and locations are getting types of natural disasters they do not typically expect to. And so I was wondering if you could speak to ways in which you all are keeping a really broad vision of like, I think about something like a wildfire, which is not a natural disaster we might traditionally associate with North Carolina, but probably is something we should begin to build our chops for. So can you speak to that?
Absolutely. When I began writing these emergency public information plans that we have, I worked closely, as I mentioned, with the Emergency Management Division and looked at the Emergency Operations Plan, the EOP that the city has. And that plan outlines any and all vulnerabilities that the city could experience, including ones that you probably wouldn't think of at top of mind. And so we built messages, we built plans that go to each of those. And I think in general, it's to the point of being nimble. It's always thinking about something that could happen. We had an incredibly busy, wet, rainy season this year. How many times did a flood warning go out in the city of Raleigh? And so just always being ready for that next thing that could come up and not thinking that we are safe from anything that could hit our community and impact us.
And you look at, and I think you mentioned this, but just to confirm, you look at.
Councilmember Patton, if you could lift your mic up, they're having a hard time hearing you.
Thanks, got it. I think you said this earlier, but just to reaffirm, like, you look at incidents that are happening across in other places and learn from what they're doing. So for instance, you're looking at LA right now and saying, like, how would our system hold up to an incident like this?
That's right. That's something I'm passionate about this work. That's something that I always go and look at myself, and I share with our department and teammates, and always look at how it's being done, what resources we need, what we could do to be even better prepared to help our community members if they're experiencing that type of incident.
Awesome. And then my second question, sorry. Just one more from me. One thing I've heard and seen as best practice is that, and you've referenced it briefly, is that sort of like, we'll be back with you for our next update in X, and I can, in X time, like, I'll update you again at 1 p.m. or whatever, and just using that as a method of providing comfort and stability for the community. Can you speak to, like, when a scenario is appropriate for that and when it might not be? Like, I'm sure sometimes you don't know when you'll have new information to share, but so anyway.
I think a best practice that we, in this business, Julie Parker, other crisis communications professionals are talking about is to, especially in large scale, fast moving incidents, is to set that timeline almost every time. It is, when you first get into it, it's hard to say we'll be back in this amount of time. But when we can do that and build that into our muscle memory and say, this is our update right now, we will be here in an hour, and in an hour we might come back and say nothing has changed. Here are the facts that we have, and that might look different too. It might be a social media post, it might be a stand-up in front of the media, it might be an email, it might, whatever the case may be, an update to the website banner. So building that muscle memory in of saying, this is what we know, here's when we'll be back next, and hopefully we can get back in front of people earlier too. So that is a standard that we want to continually update and use out in the community. Thank you.
Counselor Silver.
So I had a question, Councilmember Patton, remind me about just a changing climate, and want to know how you handle the two extremes. Extreme heat, let's say it's going to be over 110 degrees with a heat index that's off the chart, or on the other side, it's cold today, but I've been here when I think we were below 10 degrees. We do have unhoused population, we have the elderly that live in certain places that may not have either heating or cooling. It may not be an emergency, but I'm just trying to understand, how do you handle or get the word out? Because we even heard this morning about how to protect your pipes, what you need to do about the extremes of excessive heat, let's say plus 110 degrees, and then cold, let's just say near zero.
The important thing is to constantly stay in touch with our community partners, knowing that we are, as the city, we are providing the services that we are providing and building those relationships with our external partners, whether it is government agencies or non-government agencies, and connecting our community to the information, building our channels when there is not an incident, making sure people know that they can come to us to receive information and point them to that information. I think that's the most critical role that we can play when it's not necessarily a service that we provide.
To follow up on that, I know the media pushes out some how-tos or what to do. I'm just trying to understand from the city's point of view, we do have a very vulnerable population that could be older or unhoused. I'm just trying to understand what messages do we put out. Clearly, there's not a lot we can do. I worked in a city where, they had cooling centers, they had heating centers. I'm just trying to understand what is our approach just on the extremes.
Certainly, it was a great question. The city offers a range of services that we try to help people understand. So number one, we will have a lot of information on our website. We'll share it on social media. Rand mentioned the partnerships is helping get the information out to them, but also getting information from them that we can reshare to get to the right people. I think this is another place we look to, like our housing and neighborhood, our housing department, and our public safety, especially our police department, who are out in the community and seeing those the different people and helping get them to the right places. And I think for today and tomorrow, our most important partner is Wake County and the White Flag shelters that they help to operate. So that's another piece of information we would help to publicize, put the media in touch with the correct person to answer questions about that, and so on.
All right. Well, I was going to say, one, just thank you for all the communication on Friday and then on earlier incidents this year. I feel like we've stayed pretty well informed, and the how rapid we were getting information. So I appreciated that across the entire city Friday, and it is gratifying to know we've done all this work. I'm just curious, like, how many times a year would a citizen get like a wireless emergency alert on average? And then if they sign up for Ready Wake, again, I understand that's by category, just ballpark volumes of when are we, how many times a year do we do a Raleigh incident call number? So is it 6 or is it 25 or?
I would need to go back to the county and get specific numbers for you to get an average. So I will be happy to take that back and get some numbers for you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I have a question, maybe a little bit further afield than just emergency communications, but I'm curious how our social media strategies might be shifting and how we are navigating many changes currently to various platforms, certainly different policies that are being put in place by the platforms themselves, as well as I think a lot of folks are shifting in and out of different platforms. So where are we, the city, which platforms are we on? And then do you see changes coming forward, how to address?
I think that's a very important question. I think one thing that I learned at DHHS, it's been really reinforced here by Brett, our social media manager, is you have to be in the conversation on the channel to get the information out there. Even if there's a lot of misinformation floating around, the only way you can counter that is by being present. So we continue to maintain our presence. Help me out here: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We also do Nextdoor, Threads, and Blue Sky. So we've kept up with the most current ones. We do not participate in TikTok because of the Chinese media ownership and the rules handed down by the state to not use that platform for security reasons. So we just continue to try to pay attention to what is new and coming at, and where people are talking, so we can make sure that we reach them. We also, I will kind of plug a little work we're doing on the community engagement side of things to be a little bit more in person and a little bit more of that old school touch. Handing out a piece of paper to somebody in an event is also still a way that can be very effective in getting your message out.
I wonder, Robin, are there any stats that you have about, I I guess, our impacts on those different platforms. I'd be curious to see, maybe in a manager's update,
That we can absolutely
just
do
what is
that.
effective, or, where are we having the most traffic?
Sure. We have about 400,000 total followers across our platforms, and usually around 1,000 people are seeing or engaging with posts on those platforms, but I'm happy to follow up with some more specific numbers.
Thank you.
Yep, Counselor Patton.
And it's probably still for Robin. So, since Jane took us far afield, I'm going to stay there for a sec. Thinking about combating misinformation, does the city have a policy on like posts versus comments? Like if a comment thread is perhaps filling with incorrect, inaccurate, or misinformation, will you get in there and say, actually, here's the source of truth?
Sure. When we're tagged in a post, we do pay attention to it and look at it. If we feel like it's an opinion, or we used to call them trolls in the old days of the internet, we probably wouldn't respond to that. We'd let that conversation go. If they're responding to a post that we have, I've seen Brett very often jump in and answer a question or correct a fact, or do something to, kind of right the conversation a little bit, to put the good information out there. Because you do need to do that. You do need to speak up when you see something that's factually wrong. I think what we try not to do is engage and get in a back and forth battle that often happens on social media.
All right. Sounds like no more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there other items to be presented?
That is all for this one.
Okay. Well, thank you, and we will adjourn the work session.